We are doing it. It's welcome. Welcome to Meet My Friends with Daddy Porter and my friend here, Doug Ziegler.
Howdy, y'all.
We are joined by one of my good friends from the mini Twin Cities area. Kind of a sensitive place at the moment at filming, just a touch. But Dan has a long history. Minneapolis craft beer. He is the provocateur. Is that the word? Maybe that's a good word to use right now. Of the website.
That's a good one too.
What is that?
Rancantor is a good one too.
Yeah, that's probably better. He's way more articulate than I am, so that'll be helpful for the show. Oh.
Old school, baby.
Old school, new school, nice school, great school. That's a good one.
Man.
I'm just having a decent IPA from a local beer brewery. We'll leave the brewery nameless.
Maybe because you've had them every show for the past 3 weeks.
I'm not saying anything, but I will say, I'm be ready to laugh because this guy is funny as hell. But we already know on Friday we had him on our Friday show, so I guess there's no reason to wait, right? Let's bring him on.
Bring him.
Let's get this party started, right?
Yeah.
Let's get this party started quickly. Okay, so first of all, anybody before we even get to anything, I gotta comment on what's back there. What's in your background? Yes, it's something.
Clark W. Griswold, baby. I'm a big fan of Christmas Vacation. I have a really good friend. We have a holiday party, and every year he tries to pull some type of prank on me. And this year, or 2 years ago, it was a life-size cardboard cutout of Clark Griswold that he positioned strategically in my house and scared the crap out of me with. So now he is a permanent resident down here in my office, and who doesn't like Clark, you know?
That's excellent. That is excellent. The comments are already coming in. I'm not sure who that is, but Doug can tell us, right, Doug?
Yeah. Let's see, you even showered, Dan. Oh man, that's coming in hot on the comments.
Right.
No, I do not. I don't know if you've heard. There's a water shortage, so if you.
I didn't hear that.
I don't know what Facebook user has against the environment. No,
they got to get. We're against Martin. So
I did just step out of the shower because I had it was a high humidity day, and I've not had a haircut since February 11th, and I'm on the schedule for July 1st. So I had to tamp down this. I had my own ecosystem. I went for a walk today and discovered birds were nesting in there. So I didn't want to have a sparrow fly out of the coif while we were live. I felt that might be distracting. So,
That was our good friend Tiffany Martin, Dan there.
It was.
Oh, yeah, this is her too, I'm sure.
Those wacky Canadians.
Yep.
All right, Dan. So for those who don't know you, and hopefully they know that you do take showers. Thanks, Tiffany. Let's start at the beginning. Where did you love of craft beer come from? Where'd you find it? What was the beer that inspired you to take this long journey you're on?
Well, I think, it goes back a ways. So I'm 41 years young and, grew up, turned 21, went college in the late 90s. And really my first introduction to beer was a lukewarm Busch Light that I had in a basement bathroom that I grabbed out of a Sterilite container amidst about 6,000 other people when social distancing was not even on the horizon. And for a while, I didn't like beer because I thought that's what beer was. However, several years later, I became intrigued when I had my first Killians Red. Now, I know that is not necessarily a craft beer per se, but it was more interesting than the lukewarm Busch Light in the basement Gropathon party that I was at. And then a couple of years later, in the summer of 2006, I visited my sister and her then fiance in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was brought to this brew pub called Great Lakes Brewing Company.
Oh.
And that is where my passion for craft beer began. And I know we have some fellow Great Lakes Brewing Company fanboys on the line here. I had never had a taster flight before. I had never been to a craft brewery before. And at that point, I knew I liked beer, but I did not have a palate. I did not really understand what it was all about. But the 8 beers on that taster board just kind of blew my mind as far as texture, flavor, aroma. And that planted a seed in my soul. And I knew I had to have more of this. And then I got back to Minnesota and went to a liquor store, and they had a very half-assed craft beer display, and there was nothing. There was not very much available. So, I tried to. That's when I kind of discovered Summit Brewing, and they have been around since 1986 in Minnesota. I started drinking some Shells out of New Ulm. Shells is the second oldest family-owned brewery in the country. Not many people know that. See, Minnesota is oftentimes flyover country for people just trying to get from one coast to the other. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in the Minnesota beer scene now. But back then in 2006, there was not much. And so over the years, we started getting more other regional craft beer. And I remember the day. It was probably maybe the next year, maybe 2007 or 2008, when I was in a liquor store and I saw an end cap of a new beer, and it was Great Lakes Brewing Company. And I tried to do a cartwheel, and I'm sure you can guess how that went. Being as someone who has a low center of gravity, I didn't stick the landing and wound up putting my foot through a Svedka vodka display, but I don't want that to be the lead here. The lead on the story is Great Lakes Brewing had arrived in Minnesota. And so I grabbed several 6-packs and I started sharing it with people. And little by little, we started getting more other regional craft beer available in the Twin Cities. And that kind of started it. And then a couple of years down the road, there was the Surly bill that passed, allowing breweries to have their own tap rooms. I think I went to my first beer festival in fall of 2010, and from there it was nuts. I can't get enough of it.
Man, so you so I love what I heard, and I'm gonna recap. So I heard Killians Red, which I can relate to, and I think Doug was shaking his head on that one. Because Killians Red was like
that's a pretty normal entry level into it, I think.
Well, yeah, but it was like the thing about Killians Red for me back then. It was like it was different. Like it was different than anything that you could grab quickly or grab cheaply too, because that was when beer was, in my opinion, equivocated to cheap. Like you don't pay that much for beer. Like beer is not something that you pay a lot of. So Killians, you would pay like, I don't know, maybe like 50 cents more or something like that. But it was at least a little bit better. So like I remember that, and then I freaking hate that beer now, for the record. But back then it was good shit. It was like really good. So then I hear Great Lakes, I hear Shells, and I hear Summit. And I know Summit is one of your favorites still. I know that.
Oh, yes.
We'll get to that in a second. But so you really had a really nice entry in my opinion, with those three, especially Great Lakes, because I'm not sure how they were back then, but Great Lakes now, they have Ella Fitzgerald, which is a fantastic porter, one of the best, widely greatest porters that you can grab. It's fantastic, love it, great. But the rest, Dan, and maybe you'll disagree with me, the rest of their beers are not great beers in my opinion, but they're really good to style and they're really drinkable. So like I'm not, everybody's taste is different, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But like for Great Lakes though, because I was just there recently, and again, I remember their beers being, especially really recently, very drinkable and very like on point. Like if it says it's a lager, it's gonna taste like a lager. It's not gonna taste like a lager with cocoa nips. If it's, you know what I mean? So they just do the style straight, and they're doing pretty well. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Well, something that you said that kind of like when you said the beers are not great, but they're brewed to style. So what is a great beer? I mean, we could spend the next 3 hours talking about the difference between great and brewed to style. Are they flashy beers? No, they're not. But I think right now we're in an odd time in craft beer where a lot of people are equating great with new.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like Great Lakes, they've got Dortmunder Gold. It's not flashy. It's not triple dry hopped. It's not barrel aged in a drum of unicorn tears. But after you mow the lawn, it's pretty damn refreshing and tastes great. So, there's a beer for every situation.
I'm getting accused of wanting hazy IPAs. I guess it's in the context of this conversation with me saying that their beers are, I didn't say boring, but I kind of did, right?
I have one other of theirs that I think is really, 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 really good, which is Blackout Stout. I really like that. That's really well done. That's really good. It's tasty. But that's also one that outside their barrel variants, it's steady. It's always, like I said, every year there's not a lot of difference between the way they taste. But yeah, I really dig that. That and their Edmund Fitzgerald. I was going to say Ella Fitzgerald. That would have been wrong. Those two are really excellent as far as, from my palate at least.
Yeah. I also should say kind of bringing it back to Clark Griswold. Every year at this party, probably the reason why people get so bold and want to pull pranks on me is I do get a 16-gallon keg of Great Lakes Christmas Ale, and that is tapped and enjoyed well throughout the night. So, if you guys find yourselves in the Midwest the third Saturday of December, you swing on by, and I will feed you, and I will make sure that you do not go away thirsty.
That is one of their best beers. I absolutely fantastically love that beer. That's one I used to seek out all the time. I don't seek it out anymore, but I used to. It's great. It's fun beer. It doesn't surprise me that I've never heard that about you, Dan. But it doesn't surprise me at all that you're all down with the Christmas ale.
Oh yeah,
it is really good beer. Tiffany agrees too. So 2010 was really when you said that's when you hit the ground running next with the craft beer. I mean, you were nibbling around and drinking around before. So 2010, where does the love of craft beer lead to you writing about it and running around town during the summer?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. So I started going to beer festivals, and at beer festivals in Minnesota. Now, as I've traveled around and come to learn a little bit about other places, in some states, a beer festival consists of you get in, you get a wristband, and you have little tickets where you can go try beers. In Minnesota, it's you pay for the ticket and it's no holds barred, much like WrestleMania 6. And so that was great for me because kind of entering the being very much a novice, being able to go around and sample different things really got me in tune with what I liked and what I didn't like. And you also meet a lot of really interesting people at these beer events. And the summer, so that was fall of 2010. In the summer of 2011, I randomly met one of my childhood friends who I had not seen probably since high school, and his name is Will Matthews. And he, at the time, ran a Facebook group called Beer Aficionados, and we got to talking, and we said it was cool to run into you. We both like craft beer. You mentioned this Facebook group, so I immediately joined, and we kind of would chat on and off on there, and he'd post a lot of interesting articles and ask a lot of interesting questions. And then that kind of went away, and he started up this he started a beer blog called Beer Pluma, and I followed that and kind of corresponded, would comment on different things, would read the articles. And what I liked about it was that it had a very accessible tone. about beer. There at the time there were a lot of different blogs and different ways to interact with craft beer in the written form and in podcast form. And what I liked about Beer Pluma was it kind of spoke to beer geeks who had been around it a long time, and it also spoke to beer novices, which I very much felt I was a part of and could relate to. And so followed that for a couple of years, and then in August of 2014, they were looking for somebody to write, and he reached out to me on Facebook and asked if I would be interested in being a writer. And I was like, I don't know. I can write, but I've never done it before. So it was a little intimidating. And he said, well, why don't you write up a beer and, we can talk about it. We met at Bent Brewstillery, which is an interesting place because it's a brewery and a distillery. And it's located in Roseville, Minnesota. And the very first beer I did a review on was a beer called El Guerrero. And it was a stout with Chilean peppers in it. So kind of like a mole type situation. And we had a great conversation that night. We talked about beer and all sorts of other things. And then he's like, well, you're hired. I'm like, okay. So I got my start then. And that was just a really great way to interact with beer in a different way, because before I was just drinking it to enjoy it and become a better dancer. And now I was drinking beer to to really kind of dissect and learn about it. And that was like, oh, well, I need to learn more what creates this flavor or this texture in different types of things. So that's how I got into the blogging.
I have to correct the record. I think I said before you got on that you were the founder. I don't think you're the founder. You're definitely not the founder.
Yeah, I wasn't I'm big not the founder, but I'm kind of like the editor-in-chief, basically.
Right. You're the big head honcho now, yeah. You came in and took over. Right.
the dictator of Beer Pluma, if you will.
I said that, not you.
Yeah. No, there's actually I have to say so Will and I kind of co-run Beer Pluma, and then we have Eric Wentling and Nick Aschenbrunner, who are our main contributors. So it's a good group of people.
Cool. Doug?
Yeah. No, so I was just getting ready to research something because I'm always on point.
Because I gotta.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We need to know what you're thinking.
So I've got this straight hash, homie. It's 100% hop hash double IPA.
Ooh,
from you boys.
Look at the can art, first of all. It's pretty awesome.
It's pretty damn awesome.
And it is from, big surprise, you guys won't be shocked, because the last time we did an online thing, I was drinking some Lupulin stuff. So this is from Lupulin Brewing Company. And, you ask parents who have multiple children, which are their favorite children, and they'll never tell you. But you can always kind of like surmise and you can kind of infer. I'm not going to say that Lupulin is my favorite Minnesota brewery, but it might be one of my favorites.
Right. Well, there's a bunch you like, in my opinion, because I read your stuff and I see you online, and again, I know you love Summit. Summit's your jam. I know that. Yep. So it's just hard to pick one when you have 6,000 others. And Dan doesn't even get to mention like my favorite. But I haven't had the experience of going to Lupulin, so I don't know that one. I've been to Summit, and I've had I wasn't. Oh man, I was at Summit at the wrong time. What do you mean by that? Well, I visited Summit when I wasn't in my lager renaissance, as I would say right now. I was at Summit before, so I get to Summit, and I'm like, where's the fucking ale? So sorry. You know what I mean? So I didn't like. It's funny sometimes when you go to a brewery, sight unseen, you don't know anything about it, and then you get in there and there's like 15 beers, and you're like, yes, and 11 of them are IPAs, and you're like. So Summit is there's 10 beers on tap, and 7 or 5 of them are lagers. Now again, I would love that now, but I wasn't in that place the last time I went there. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
But I enjoyed it though. But like, I cannot wait to come back up to Minneapolis because the next time I'm there, I'm going to Summit and I'm going to have a good time because I'm ready for those lagers. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about Summit or Beaubien as breweries that you frequent a lot and you know a lot about them.
For sure, yeah. I mean, Summit Brewing Company is old school. Founded in 1986 by Mark Stutrud, and he was when he was developing his business plan, somebody from the Brewers Association sent him a letter telling him that it would not be financially feasible for him to start a brewery. And he has that letter framed, I'm sure, in his office. But 34 years later, he's laughing all the way to the bank. And one thing that Summit does that often I feel is underappreciated is that they have pushed their chips to the center of the table when it comes to quality assurance and consistency in their beers. They don't chase trends. However, Michael Jackson, not the Thriller guy, the beer hunter guy, said that their Northern Porter was one of the best porters he's ever had. And they've won multiple gold medals, GABF gold medals. Most recently, their Extra Pale Ale, Summit EPA, won a gold medal, I want to say 2 years ago at GABF. Mm-hmm. Their Keller Pills, which there's a funny story behind that beer. I don't know if we'll have time, but if we get there, I'll tell that one. The Keller Pills won a GABF gold, I think 3 years ago. They do consistent, delicious, flavorful beers that are all well made, and their Oktoberfest is great. Their Maibach is great. They have a great new summer variety called Cabin Crusher. It's a Kolsch style beer with lime. That's fantastic. But then for the old standby in Minnesota, you can go into any bar and you will 99.9% of the time see Summit EPA. And that is just the standard in Minnesota for good beer. If they don't have anything else that you like, you'll take a Summit EPA.
Mm-hmm.
So right. They've been around. They do a great job. And then they don't get as much fanfare as I believe they should. But, we all know in craft beer, when you have to kind of keep up with the Joneses, consistency is not necessarily as sexy as like triple dry hopping with 80 pounds per batch,
for a milkshake IPA. Right.
Exactly. So if you want the crazy hopped beer that you can't see through, you got to go to Beaubien up in Big Lake, Minnesota. And they have the opposite thing with them, whereas like a lot of people know them for being a very hop-forward brewery. Their lager game, I would put right up next to Shell's, right up next to Summit. They are cranking out some amazing beers. And as funny as it sounds, Beaubien, since they've been entering beers in GABF, has won 1 gold medal. And that was for a Dortmunder. The first time they ever brewed a lager, they won a GABF gold medal for it, which is crazy.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic, great, lovely beer.
Mm-hmm. And so, it's kind of like a tale of two breweries that really kind of describe what the Minnesota craft beer scene is all about. And the thing that they both have in common is they both have really put a lot of resources into their lab, their systems, their quality assurance. They do not sell a beer that is bad. They do not sell a beer that is flawed. And so, when you go in there to either place, what they have on tap might not be your favorite, but you can't argue that it's not well made. And that's what I like about both of them. They're one is like in the heart of St. Paul. One is 45 minutes north of the Twin Cities. And both of them articulate what craft beer is all about, is like bringing people together to enjoy a great product.
Cheers.
Cheers to that.
Well, this is fantastic. So the straight hash homie back. I don't know if you know your football history, but the Minnesota Vikings had a receiver named Randy Moss, and they were playing the Green Bay Packers in a playoff game that they were not predicted to win, and they wound up winning by like more than 2 touchdowns. But Randy Moss caught a touchdown, and he proceeded to mime mooning the Lambeau Field, and he was fined $10,000 by the NFL. And one of the local sports reporters asked him as he was leaving the Vikings practice facility about how are you going to pay the check, and he said straight cash, homie, and the straight hash homie
was born.
Homage, and that's one of the best, I think, best sports quotes of all times. Straight cash.
There's some good ones. Like one of my favorites was he was no longer coaching for the Vikings, but Dennis Green when he did they are who we thought they are.
Yeah.
That whole thing where he just went nuts in a press conference, and yeah, there it is.
Yeah, here we go. Getting ready.
This is one of my favorite things ever. I absolutely
love so glorious.
I love this.
Yeah. That was when my hatred for Joe Buck reached meteoric proportions. I already thought he was a nut job, but after that, he was so offended. I'm like, oh, you take your sensibilities and shove it.
Oh, that was one of my favorite. Oh man, I love Randy Moss. Man, he's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like one of those. I remember seeing that on like ESPN because I didn't catch it live, and I was like, "Whoa, man!"
Randy, who Green Bay? What? Oh, we're going there already here. Nice. We're in the way. We're not going to talk about Tiffany and Moons, are we?
Yeah.
We have a history.
Well, I'm not going to say that on a live show, but she made a pretty convincing story about mooning one time when we were in a.
She said it on our live show, I believe. So
was it on our live show? I don't remember.
She said it here.
Hams was the.
We don't care. Anyway, Doug, you have follow up, don't you?
Yeah, I actually want to ask a couple questions about some Minneapolis breweries because it's not a scene. I'm not there, but obviously, Dangerous Man's one that I really want to try because Greg just loves them and. Hey, man, I want to try all the good stuff, right? Pressed ham. You're right.
Oh, damn. Oh, God.
We covered that last time. Look that up in the archives, folks.
So a couple of the ones that I wanted to talk about was one is Modest, because I believe Modest was one of those that was doing like a fundraiser for Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. They put out a big statement about that. Them Indeed Brewing, which I hear a lot about, but I've never had. And then one that I just stumbled upon that I love the name was one called Sisyphus Brewing.
Oh yeah.
So what have you been to any of those? Have you had any of those beers? What are your opinion of those?
Yeah, can I jump in here real quick about Modus? They're also the brewery that did that whole AB and Bav did the cease and desist order on them because they made a beer, Dilly Dilly beer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then so there Modus is also that one, Doug. I want to make sure you knew that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And I didn't want Dan to miss it. But go down.
Yeah, so it's actually pronounced modest. I think that's the one thing when it came out, it's like, is that modest or modest? So it's modest, and it's like they're right down. If you ever go to Target Field, they're right behind Target Field. So perfect place to pregame before a Twins game. And they have a very interesting catalog of beers. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is due in part to their unique brew house. They have whereas like hopefully this is not going to bore people, but in it I want to say traditional brew house where you have like a mash tun and you put the grain in as crushed grains and you let the water kind of like work its way through and the chemicals get coaxed out of the grain, for lack of a better term, but you're still putting in a whole cracked grain. Their brew house, they use it's like pulverized grain, so it comes out as flour, and that gives them a lot more of an ability to kind of manipulate different flavors and textures out of the grains that they use, and it shows up in the beer in incredibly unique ways. And I know that I think Alaskan Brewing Company has a similar brew house, but the reason that they have it is it uses like a third of the water, and so they can turn out basically like when it would take one brewery who uses your typical or conventional system, like in the time that takes to do one beer, I think they can do like 1 1/3 batches. So it's way more efficient. Wow. And they can use all sorts of different like flours and different things. So when they make like they did like a rye stout, and the rye character in that beer was so intense and so perfect, and just not how rye usually comes across. And that was because of their brew house. So they're doing a lot of really interesting things. And their head brewer used to brew at Dangerous Man. So there you go, Greg. The multiple facets of Dangerous Man. So Modest is a great one, and they have I want to say, I think they have a beer called First Call. It is a coffee lager. You guys are looking at me like I'm crazy. What's a coffee lager? I know. I am. Same thing. Oh, and so it's this crisp, amazing like beer, and it has all the richness of a perfectly roasted cup of coffee. Very little acidity, very little acid. But I'm convinced that the reason that beer comes across as it does is because of their unique brew system. So it's called First Call. Did I say last call? Maybe I said last call. First Call.
First Call. That's the one that they have there. The one that I have to say looks super interesting is a double marshmallow and vanilla lager.
I haven't tried that one yet. That's the what did they call that one?
Mallow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to try that.
And their label game is pretty on point.
Yep. Oh, very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the more. So they've been around a couple of years now, but they're definitely, where Summit is very traditional in what they do. Modest is very, very experimental, very kind of pushing the envelope. So you go in there immediately and you smell the mustache wax, because that's where all the cool cats go to hang out. Yeah, their beer is fantastic.
Beard oil. It's beard oil.
Yeah, their beer is absolutely phenomenal, and I'm a big fan of that one. You asked about Indeed. So Indeed most recently opened up a second brewery in Milwaukee. So Greg, I'm sure you can probably get Indeed beer where you're at. Are you drinking one right now?
No, but
you look like you were about to.
No, that honey. I was thinking about that honey Mexican lager.
Oh yes. So, I think about, to use a sports analogy, I think that Peyton Manning and Tom Brady are always kind of like thought of together because they competed, kind of came up at the same time. We're in a lot of big games together. Dangerous Man and Indeed are the same way. I want to say that Indeed opened their tap room a little bit before Dangerous Man, but they are located maybe a mile from each other.
4 minutes away or something. Right.
They're both in Northeast, and they started the Northeast Minneapolis craft beer boom, renaissance, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of times it's like if you go to Dangerous Man, you'll wind up at Indeed or vice versa because they're so
right. Close. Correct. You can't do one without the other. You can't.
Right. They both have sensational beers, and what I've liked about Indeed, and I'll be completely frank and transparent here. Indeed's regular portfolio of beers does not necessarily do a whole lot for me. They're fine, but there's nothing really that personally connects to what my palate enjoys versus like Dangerous Man, their chocolate milk stout and their peanut butter porter, their cream ale, like are all go-tos. If I always have to have a peanut butter porter when I go there, at least a 4-ouncer. Where Indeed kind of impresses is with some of their Wood and Soul series. It's a wood barrel aged sour program that is probably one of the ones in the state that doesn't get as much press as Shells. But their cherry dust is amazing. And when you go there to their tap room, they'll always have different variants of the things on tap. And so you can kind of dabble and some you might see once, some you might see again. But they have an incredible barrel program there. When you get into some of their stouts that are barrel aged, those are fantastic. They have one called Whiskey Queen, which is dynamite. It's phenomenal. They used to do one called Rum King, and I'm not sure if they're doing it every year anymore, just because quality of rum barrels was starting to become so suspect, and they would lose so much of it that it was not financially. It didn't make sense because they lost so much seepage. Seepage is a problem for barrels that are not structurally sound. So it's interesting, and recently, probably 2 or 3 years ago, they came out with a B-side Pils. That's what it's called, a Pilsner. Now, that beer is fantastic, and that's a year-round. So I should say more recently, their kind of like everyday portfolio has become a little bit better in my eyes. But their seasonals really are where they kind of wow me, and a lot of people, a fair amount of people kind of say the same thing if you ask them. But they do great beer, and so they, along with Dangerous Man, really created this awesome synergy in this area of Northeast Minneapolis that previously didn't have a ton going on, and now there's great restaurants, great restaurants all around that area. So they've done a lot for that. Now that you asked about Sisyphus, and they are located closer to kind of like downtown Minneapolis. And their claim to fame, in my opinion, they have live comedy shows there. So they have like a stage where they'll do like a lot of music, but they have like open mic nights, and they have a lot of comedians go there. And they have this really awesome mural on the side of their building that was unfortunately vandalized several years ago. And they referred to the offender as well, I'll say it. I don't know what the language is.
You can say whatever you like.
Okay. Everything you want.
Well, they called the guy an ass toy who vandalized the mural, and then they started releasing this ass toy barrel aged stout, which is really good. So that's kind of funny how Shakespeare said, "What's in a name? What's in an ass?" So they have some good beers. They have a peanut butter stout that I really like. I think they've started to dabble in some sour beers, and so they're on the smaller end of things. I don't know exactly what size, but I want to say it's probably less than 1,000 barrels a year versus Dangerous Man, which does a couple thousand, I want to say. But yeah, all three of those ones that you asked about are really good.
Sisyphus I'd never heard of. Is just looking at like breweries in Minneapolis, and I'm a sucker for those kind of names. Something that's got like Greek history and like all those kind of things. It just kind of I'm always sort of a fan of that stuff. So sorry for the tangent on that one.
Oh no, that's fine.
So a thing that I wanted to mention about the whole Indeed Dangerous Man dynamic is what I would call it, and you kind of phrase it a little bit like that. They're close together, but they also offer two different experiences as far as pubs. Indeed gives you the old school pub feel, the neighborhood pub thing. You walk in there They got a really nice. I mean, it's a really nice area there. I've enjoyed twice when I was there. Food. They have a food cart there. It's a really nice setup. It's definitely more of a what's the word I want to use? Done up place or made up place. And it's really not. Don't get me wrong, it's nice. Whereas Dangerous Man offers us something different. I mean, you have to get there at the right time, or you may not get a seat. You may be standing up. It may be hot. You may not be able to get to the bathroom. I mean, it's just a different experience. But I don't know, like it's great because they I believe they play off each other. And I don't know. I'm excited about both of them. And I agree with your generalization about the beers too. Both of them. I just think they just play off each other great. And if I lived in that neighborhood, that would just be a fantastic dynamic to have both of them to be able to just play off and just go back and forth. And again, Dangerous Man does so many different. Every time I go in there, there's just something different there that is intriguing and unique. And that's just my comment. I like them both. Pretty good. So, yeah.
Well, and I want to add on one thing, talking about like one of the differences. And this was at the time when Dangerous Man opened, they were kind of the first brewery, at least in Minnesota, to not have eyes on distribution. They're tap room only. Now they've added on a crowler shop, but you can't find them in liquor stores. And when they first did that, people were really kind of wondering about why aren't they going to be in cans? And people, the owners made it very clear that, we want this to be something that we can kind of manage. We want to grow at our own pace, and we want to make sure that the quality does not change if we get bigger. And we want to just kind of like be able to rotate through a lot of different styles. And at the time, people didn't get it. And as a matter of fact, when they first opened, their chocolate milk stout pretty much was the talk of the town. And I went there. The first 3 times I went there, they were out of it. And I was like, dang it. So I guess I'll try this. And what I wound up doing is kind of, doing the Texas two-step around their portfolio of all the other different styles that they had. And really became obsessed with that brewery because there was not a bad beer that they brewed. And so like that whole like tap room only model, if you think about the crowler shop and the amount of like lack of overhead they have without like having to go through a distributor, that model, we've seen it in kind of across the country really take off. As the kind of the liquor store shelf space game has kind of shifted. Right now, a lot of places opening up are going tap room only just because the profit margins are so much more favorable. And, even during COVID-19, Rick, one of 2 of my favorite Canadians, he works at the crowler shop, and they've been busy as hell. They've been running out of crowlers, left and right. And so, even without like production, because they had the tap room and because that tap room created such a fervor, that it created this amazing demand. And I think a lot of places have looked to that as like, okay, so maybe tap room only is the way to go. So it's very interesting.
It's interesting, but it's not. Like, I don't know if it's duplicable. I mean, or I don't know if everybody can do it because they created that buzz that like it just permeates. It's like for lack of it's really contagious. How about that? I was gonna say it's COVID, but I didn't want to do that. It's really contagious. Like because I know people who we had a home deck con up at Minneapolis last year, and there were a few guys that were like, I have to get to Surly and Dangerous Man. Now, Surly, again, I would understand that a little bit more. Surly's bigger. Surly has a bigger distribution. There's more likely a chance that you've had Surly than ever Dangerous Man. Ever. And the fact that people were saying Surly and Dangerous Man at the same thing just blew me away. I was like, wow, that's really, really good as far as, them creating buzz and also them forcing people to go to their tap room. I love that. Like, you have to go to our tap room to have our stuff, or you got to know Rick, or you got to be friends with somebody who's friends with somebody. So
Yeah.
that's just amazing. That clearly, clearly they're killing the beer and they're killing the marketing, and their business plan is on point. So I love them. I do. I'm a fanboy. So I have a comment for you here. I have to jump this one in here for you quick. You can see it, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, so yeah. Okay. So, question about barrel theory in St. Paul, and is Steel Toe still kicking? Steel Toe not only is still kicking, they're kicking asses and taking names. That's what they're doing. So Steel Toe is a fantastic brewery in St. Louis Park. It's just a bit west of Minneapolis. It seems like it sounds weird to say that Steel Toe is starting to feel like one of the old school Minnesota craft breweries, but they got in the game kind of right when the taproom bill passed, and so they brew fantastic beers. They got their size 7 IPA, their size 4, kind of like a session IPA. One of my favorite beers that they do is their Scotch Ale is fantastic. They have a really good summer beer. I want to say the name is escaping me right now, but yes, to answer your question, Steel Toe is still very much kicking ass. And Barrel Theory in St. Paul. Let's talk about Barrel Theory for a second. The people that started Barrel Theory all had quite a treasure trove of industry experience through Surly. And their space is, again, kind of like more tap room only. They do sell crowlers. They sell a lot of crowlers. And they have kind of like a cult following amongst the beer traders because they do pastry stouts. They do kettle sours. They do hazy IPAs. So a lot of them, a lot of people, that are chasing the trends, they love Barrel Theory. It would not be crazy for them, fans of Barrel Theory, to offer up their firstborn when they do a bottle release. They do fantastic, amazing beers, and they have such an amazing ability when they make a stout or actually probably just as common in their kettle sours, to infuse food flavors in their beers. They have one of the first beers that they opened with, and they have it on and off again. It's called Key Sublime. It's a kettle sour that gives you every aspect of a bite of key lime pie. It has a creaminess. It has a sharp, zesty, tart key lime bite, and then you get the graham cracker, grainy, familiar, soothing flavor of a really good crust. And it's well documented that when I go in there and have a glass of that, I will weep openly to the point that I'm usually asked to leave. And it's fantastic. And don't even get me started on their stouts. Holy, yes! I mean, they had a beer that was modeled after a dessert, like a Greek dessert.
Baklava?
Baklava, yes. And it had every element of baklava. It had like the walnut. It had like the kind of graininess of the phyllo and the honey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so good. They have an ice cream social, which is like Neapolitan ice cream in a stout. I don't know how they do it. They've got they just and you ask me, like, I don't typically go for pastry stouts because they tend to be a bit sweet, but at Barrel Theory they have the formula dialed in so well. And then their hazy IPAs, they have like Raindrops, Shooter McGavin, and what I like about their beer names are really creative because they're a lot of pop culture references. Like they have a Pilsner called Rage Quit, which is really good. It's just an ordinary Pilsner, and people ask me, like, when you go into Barrel Theory, why are you just drinking a Pilsner? There's so many other options. It's like, well, their beers are also really high in octane. So if I, rule number one of not losing your pants in public, mix in a Pilsner, So,
Right.
Got to make sure you pace yourself there, man. If they have all that heavy stuff, which sounds right up my alley, I think that would be a kind of place I would go in and probably not leave for like 8 hours.
Yeah. And it's
I would
nice
roll out there.
It's a really cool location. They're right next to this awesome beer bar that has great food. Across the street, there's it's an old school St. Paul institution. So if you're ever going through your day and you feel like I haven't had my dose of bigotry in the 1980s yet, you can go into this place called the Gopher Bar. They have awesome Coney Islands. However, it's not at all a place you want to hang out. It's rough. It's rough. It's very much not what the world needs. But their conies are good. I've been there one time. I don't think I can go back.
Walk in and order your conies and get out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So I want to bring up something that hopefully isn't painful. Summer of Dan.
Oh.
Were you going to have that this year before all this broke down?
Oh man, tell you what, I got to bring in my sympathy buddy. The Summer of Dan is kind of going to take the black this summer. Much like Jon Snow, it's going to be north of the wall. Actually, it's not going anywhere because I don't think I would love to go north of the wall because that would mean I would be able to visit Canada, but that's not going to happen. So I had to Badger Hill Trader Pale Ale, solid IPA. My plan, actually, I was planning on doing more of a staycation this summer anyway. So for various reasons, when I came back from last summer's Colorado trip, I was adding up all the breweries I've ever been to in Colorado, and it was almost more than the breweries I've been to in Minnesota. I'm like, well, that needs to change. So my plan was already to kind of do, rather than one kind of like longer 3-week beer voyage in one fell swoop, I was going to kind of break it up and do day trips. And my goal was to try to visit every brewery in Minnesota that I had not been to yet over the summer. And that would be kind of like an interesting idea, because when you travel for beer, I think you go in with a very kind of like a hyper focus of, because it's a new place, you view it differently. And there's a lot of breweries I go to where it's like, oh, it's in Minnesota, I can come back here, and sometimes I don't think I'm quite as observant, or I don't really look through it. I don't look through the lens of a traveler. So my idea was like, what if I pretended I was doing like a vacation in my home state, and so approaching my brewery visits the same way I would approach them if I was on one of my Summer of Dan vacations, I thought would be a neat spin on it. Well, then COVID happened, so now I'm hoping that I'll be able to even do that. But right now, currently, the only breweries that are open to the public for like having a beer on draft are ones that have patios. So Summer of Dan is very much in flux right now, and so I don't know, man.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's June. It's tough. I don't know. You might have in August. Maybe you might. I don't know.
Yeah. Just when I start doing it, then it'll be time to go back to work. So
yeah. And then our friend Ryan Newhouse out in Montana, they already opened up or they at least are in phase 1. They actually might be in phase 2 now. Obviously, okay. Minneapolis area is not Montana. My point is that I believe that the way it feels is that opening is going to be almost as it feels like it may come quicker than everybody thinks. How about that? Like we're almost like in a mindset where it's going to be long term, and I think that's good for us to think that. But I don't know. I'm starting to get optimistic about that. I could be wrong, but I'm just going to stay relatively optimistic. So Summer of Dan, that's been going for how long?
So since 2015, so I did Colorado in 2015, 2016, I did the East Coast, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont. 2017 was my first beer bloggers conference where I met Greg, and that was the leaping off point to it was a total of about 3 weeks on the road, but I went through the entire state of Michigan.
Yeah, you did.
Like 53 breweries in Michigan. That was fantastic. And then 2018 was Portland, and then last summer I went back to Colorado again.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Excellent. And then before we let you go, you have to tell us about your bracket. You have a beer bracket, and was it the only saving grace this year for March?
Yeah, man, it was tough. So Beer Pluma has been doing like a beer bracket. We call it Brew Madness. We wanted to call it March Madness, but then we did some Googling, and apparently that's like trademark. So we didn't need some handsy folks showing up at my door to shake me down for legal fees. So we call it Brew Madness. So the Beer Pluma Brew Madness is what it is. It's a celebration of Minnesota craft beer. We have fans vote, and so they vote in different regions, and they take the 16 most voted on breweries. We put them in a bracket, very, very much like the NCAA beer bracket. And so this was the 7th year, I believe, if my math is right, of it. And so we had big plans. We were ready to partner with Elevated Wine and Spirits. They were going to sponsor it, and they were going to kind of showcase some of the brewery matchups on an end cap with six packs. We had some great sponsors. We had Sidewalk Dog. We had Northern Ale Guide. We had, of course, I'm spacing on them. Mug Ugly. A bunch of different local companies. And so we were set to kick it off kind of like the beginning of March. Then COVID-19 happened, and breweries were kind of like closing, and we pressed pause on it for a while because we wanted because we knew we had a lot of sponsors that had decided to like help us out with that. We wanted to like give them as much of a visibility as we could, so we held off and then restarted it a little bit later. And it seemed like for a lot of it, a lot of breweries still got behind it, but we didn't quite see the level of engagement for obvious reasons this year. But I did get a lot of comments and things like that from people saying it was fun to see that type of like thing go on, because a lot of the craft beer stuff that we're so used to during that time just kind of went away. And so we had the brewery that won it came out of the North region, Roost Tech Brewing Company out of Monticello, Minnesota, which is about 10 minutes away from Lupulin. They won for the first time, and they had like this crazy, their social media is insane. They just have so much support in Monticello. A lot of people were pulling for them. So that was a really cool thing. So, we've been doing it for a long time, and it's just kind of fun to see different matchups and different breweries that really get behind it. It's also fun to see like every year the brackets are a little different because it's all voted on by fans. And so as Minnesota has expanded the number of breweries in the state, I think we are up to about 220 registered breweries in the state of Minnesota. So it becomes, it becomes pretty difficult for some places to even get into the tournament. It's fun to see how breweries get behind it, how they have fun with it. And so hopefully next year will kind of like be a return to our normal level of engagement. But we were really excited that people did get into it. We had a lot of fans get into it. It's just kind of a fun way to celebrate local Minnesota beers, because not everybody knows about, everybody knows about Surly, Summit, Shells, Barrel Theory, Lupulin, but there's a lot of cool smaller breweries kind of outstate Minnesota that are really doing some fantastic things that they get a little bit of spotlight. For instance, last year's champion was Spilled Grain Brew House up in Annandale, Minnesota. And people had heard of them, and they make really great beer, but winning that kind of put a little bit of an extra spotlight on them, and I think they saw an uptick in traffic in their tap room and everything. So, it's kind of a fun thing we can do to support the local Minnesota craft brewery community.
Yes, Beer Day says Ben Paddle, and I second that. Love it.
Oh yeah, Ben Paddle's awesome.
Another one I gotta throw at you, or just throw out there, is I know it's old school, and for some people it's I don't know, people don't get excited about it as much as I do, but I really was excited about Fickers when I was up there. I absolutely loved it. I loved it.
Fickers is old school. Fickers is, their apricot wheat on a sunny day in the summer. There's nothing better than that. Yeah, they were one of the original kind of like breweries up in Duluth, and they have just like a really cool brewery. They got the big smokestack that you can see pretty much all the way up the shore of Lake Superior if you're in Duluth. That place is, I think, where they helped lay the foundation for the vibrant craft beer scene that's happening right now in Duluth, with kind of Bent Paddle kind of taking over as like the big craft brewery, and they also have like Hoops Brewing up there. They got Urza Minor. Now they got a couple of cideries.
What's that monk one that has pizza?
Oh, Thirsty Pagan in Superior.
Yeah. What a name!
And name. Earth Rider in Superior. Fantastic beer.
Okay.
You want to get your lager on?
Yeah.
Get your butt to Earth Rider, and they have their tap room is like it's an old kind of Wisconsin dive bar. They've got kitschy beer lights up there. It's called the Cedar Lounge. It's fantastic. If you go up there, it's a must.
Awesome. And Duluth, before COVID, Duluth was on my and my family's short list of places to go. My list, for beer, but the family short list for a quick vacation. It's only like 6 hours.
Great place to take the family. There's hiking. There's all sorts of great stuff to do.
Right, but since it's Canada, I gotta only do it in July and August. So
it's a rough go if you go up there. I mean, it's really pretty if you go up there in the wintertime, but there's a reason there was a wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's rough up there.
Right, it's correct. So Dan, it's been fantastic talking to you and you telling everybody what you do. Is there anything we missed?
I've got some erotic poetry I could read if we want to really go out with a bang. No, I think we've covered it. Hey-oh. There once was a man named Enos. That's where I'll leave it, boys. Always fun to chat with you guys and have a stay safe during the pandemic. And I want to just say something. If you're paying attention to anything going on right now in the country, you know that over a week ago there was a very tragic event that took place in Minneapolis. Unarmed man by the name of George Floyd was murdered by a Minneapolis police officer. And what is the fallout from that has been nothing short of just tragic. I live in St. Paul. That's about 20 minutes away from where it happened, but I don't think there's anybody in the state of Minnesota and beyond right now that's really not hurting, because what this event has shown an ugly spotlight on is the continuous police brutality that continues to happen in our country, and it is absolutely awful. And I just wanted to say, I know I've been talking to a lot of my neighbors, a lot of my friends, a lot of my family. There's frustration, there's anger, there's hurt. I just want to say that I feel so bad for the family of George Floyd, and I feel so bad that we live in a society that is not equal for everybody. And I hope that, in a time when there's such heartache going on in the world and such seriousness, that being able to take a little break from it and talk beer was a nice thing. But let's not forget that we've got a lot of work to do as a country to heal and make this injustice go away. It's just really, really hard. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I wanted to thank you guys for having me on. This was definitely a nice bit of levity in a week that has otherwise felt quite unbearable. So I appreciate that.
And I appreciate you coming on during this time, because I wasn't sure if you still wanted to, and I would have understood if you didn't.
Yeah.
So Tiffany sends big love and support from Canada. Beer Days has a comment.
Yes.
And somebody in Facebook said, well said. And
AHD.
I completely agree. Let's see here. We got some more coming in here. Dan, you sparked more conversation with that last comment than anything you said before, brother. And that's a good sign, of course. Amen, brother. Fighting for COVID can unite us, fighting injustice and racism to preach, Andrew.
Yes, totally agree.
Great show in chat. I always say it's always awesome. Doug's cool, but it's always great to have a great guest. And great guests make the show. Doug and I, we're good, but you guys coming on makes it.
That's what makes the whole show, man, is having people on. And you're right, it is a heavy time, and it's nice to be able to kind of just take at least an hour here and just have beer and just kind of get back out of that for a minute, just to take a breath. Unfortunately, I mean, it's hard, and we're all coping the best way we can. And thanks again for being on and giving us a little bit of levity here.
Yeah, well, anytime. You know me, I'm always happy to chat.
Yeah, and this was people don't know, this was a rescheduled one. So we were working on other things. We had Dan scheduled for another day, and it came back to this day, and it ultimately came back to. It ultimately came on a day that was really interesting. And again, I'm thankful for you guys, because again, if not for us scheduling this, I'd be watching TV and racking my brain. So at least I can wait at least another 15 minutes to go back to the TV and start racking my brain again. But I did get to talk to my friends, and this is another reason why I do this, because during this COVID, I've been really able to talk to my friends. And even if it's just, once again, this is just the hour that everybody sees, but nobody sees the go back and forth about when we're going to schedule, what's going on. And I love that stuff. Maybe it'd be a little tedious, but I love it because I'm talking to my friends and I'm going back and forth with them. And that any communication is good communication in a time like this for me. So, Dan, any last words? And you can, I said it last time, and here you go, man. Any last words? Did we miss anything?
We didn't. I think we covered it. I just want to say, what I love most about beer is that it brings people together. And without beer, we wouldn't be sitting here talking. So really thankful for as I've got to know Greg, you over the years, and Doug over the last year. It's been really nice, and I really, if the silver lining of this COVID-19 has been, we've been able to do a lot more Zoom, and it's kind of like we've all gotten to know each other better, so that when we do get to have a beer in person, those hugs will be even better.
Better,
for sure.
Shit.
Now somebody's asking if we are going to have an after party, so should I crack the hui?
You can crack whatever you like.
I think that they're asking for having a virtual Zoom after this, and the answer, unfortunately, is no, not one plan. But Dan wants to come back and do a virtual Zoom. Dan was in one of ours already.
Yeah.
You already agreed to do it. We just got to schedule it. But it just is not tonight.
Yeah.
So, and then Tiffany says, "Crack it, y'all."
I'm not going anywhere. I might as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Me and the Lord Commander down here in my basement.
Yeah.
All right, Dan. We'll see you soon. We're gonna work on that virtual chat. We'll get that going soon,
Cool.
and then we will see you back. We're gonna be bugging you in the fall to come back for the Friday show.
Yep.
I'll be there.
And I don't know if you're interested. I'm gonna throw it out to you. We're doing a politics show, all politics marathon, the Sunday before Americans' election in November. If you're interested.
Oh well, I definitely have some opinions.
Well, that's what it's about. Yeah. Hey man, you can come and air your grievances and run out. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But we'll talk to you later about that.
All right. Thanks for having me on. You guys stay safe.
Yeah.
Until next time. Cheers.
All right, man.
Cheers, man.
Thank you, buddy.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Boom. So yeah, man, Dan is fun. It's great. The timing to talk to a person who's a beer expert in Minneapolis was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And he says it all. He said it all there at the end. So yeah.
No, and that was great. And it's funny. A little pre-production thing that nobody knows is that and I don't even think you know because you showed up 1 minute before the freaking.
I was 2 minutes before and I like it. I was
one. I looked. No, I'm joking. I can't. No.
How good I am though.
But the truth be told, before that though, Dan and I were talking about, I was just letting him know how, how it's going to go and all that. And it was funny because I didn't even say anything to him about it. And then he didn't say anything to me about it. But I was just going to say, hey man, I'm not, I'll leave it to you because this is pretty much your showcase. So if you want to, you want to say anything about it, go ahead. But I never even got to say that to him. So the fact that he was, felt great in order to say what he said, it was just amazing, and I'm happy for that.
For sure.
So tomorrow, I talked to another brewer from Stable 12 in Philadelphia. We're going to see about their opening. They are opening up on Saturday. So this is going to be really interesting for me to talk to someone to a brewer that's doing it and how they feel about it and the regulations and all that. Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. That's tomorrow, I believe 2 p.m. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2 p.m. Eastern, I believe. You can find it on all the streams. And then Friday, Doug, you want to talk about who we got Friday? Do you remember? Okay, here you go. Doug, were you out in the garden all day?
No, I wasn't. I stayed up late because I was writing something last night.
Okay.
I didn't get to bed till like 2, which I'm an old man. That's too freaking late for me. So
right, and then you probably got like 4 hours of sleep, and then I
got it. Yeah. So about 3 brain cells right now. So
well, it's Creed, man. It's Creed.
It's right. Fucking Creed.
That's it's gonna be interesting, and having the Black Father on during this time, it's gonna be interesting to see what he says, and it's got a lot of cool things to talk about. So we're gonna be it's gonna be interesting. So we're going to end the stream and hopefully have a good day or the rest of the day, Doug, and we'll see you soon. Or see you Friday. You won't be here tomorrow.
No, I won't. Work calls for that, so unfortunately. But yeah, enjoy that show. I'll be trying to check in as I can.
Yeah, next week we got Marshall from Brewlosophy. You won't be on that show too, but that dude is fucking amazing. I don't know if you know anything about him, but it's fucking great.
But when I saw you posted, I'm gonna go check all that stuff out for sure. So
yeah, he brings science. Not that there's not enough science to homebrewing, but he really takes it to another level. So me and science go hand in hand. So Doug, have a great weekend. Or I'm sorry, have a great week. I'll see you before the weekend. I actually, I'm used to like this Brothers and Booze, man. Sometimes it like it's just Brothers and Booze or meet my friend. I get clueless. Like
together, all the together, so it's okay.
Right. So I'm just used to seeing you and saying have a good weekend, but have a good week. And all you guys have a good week. Catch me tomorrow with the brewer of Stable 12, Rick. But if not, the owner and brewer too. But if not, we'll see you guys on Friday.
All right. Peace.